Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Radio Mythoverse, official podcast for the Mythoverse. And today it's first week of October, which means it's the spooky season. So we're going to be talking about horror movies. And with me is my partner and our head writer, Matt Trent. Say hi, Matt.
Hey, guys.
Yeah. So what this podcast is going to be about is us talking about our favorite horror movies, favorite horror directors, and our own personal history with it. Those sorts of things. I think it's gonna be a good show, even though it's only two of us. So we're gonna have a lot of cool things to talk about, I think, on this show. So, Matt, why don't you start us off like how exactly did you get started with horror movies?
I think it's basically been probably a relatively new thing for me. I only recently started watching horror movies in time frame of things in my 20s. I basically started off with watching Alien in a sci-fi films class for college. And that made me want to see more, because I personally enjoyed the part of wasn't so much the horror aspect that I found enjoyable, but the more grounded science fiction elements, which ultimately led to Prometheus, which was pretty disappointing with how dumb some of the characters were when you looked at how realistic the characters in Alien worked. Well, then I started watching more and more. My interest in, I guess, the more ancient stuff becoming a part of it, such as the archaeology part of Prometheus was actually pretty interesting. Well, then I started off with other science fiction. Or more recently, Super Deep was a good find that was on Sutter.
What's Super Deep? I'm not familiar with that one.
Basically, it's set in the 80s, involving the hole, the deepest hole in the world that the Soviets made. Well, take that.
Are we talking about on the entire planet or just the continental Earth?
On the entire planet, I think. I'm pretty sure, or
Meaning
just be safe, continental.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure if you want the deepest hole, it's going to be somewhere at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, but going back to it, instead of it just being a hole, they built a research facility in there. Mm-hmm. And deals with something very similar to the Thing, in that they encounter something down there that basically is the cordyceps kind of monster, like what you see in The Last of Us.
Mm-hmm.
But it also takes it more of a direction similar to The Thing, where it becomes more body horror than zombies. And basically, it's about the team's journey to survive this threat. I guess if there's any movie out there right now that I could consider a worthy successor to The Thing, it'd be Super Deep.
Yeah, my history is kind of similar. It's not as impressive, so because I think a lot of that had to do with just sort of the environment I was growing up in, and being a pastor's kid, horror movies weren't exactly allowed And although I think there was the odd one that slid through the crack like Alien.
Yeah.
But where my own fascination sort of picked up was when I started watching James Rolfe's Monster Madness that he used to do. I don't know if he still does that anymore. I think he stopped doing that years ago. Just because he was running out of movies to talk about. Which, I wouldn't blame him for it. But yeah, I think I caught like the first year where he was kind of going through like all the horror movies that everybody knew. Like he was talking about all those old Universal monster movies, always like Frankenstein and Dracula and the Wolfman, and then he goes on to these more science fiction sort of ones in the 50s, like The Fly or there's probably another one in there somewhere that name is just completely escaping me. And then he gets on the 60s where he talks about movies like Night of the Living Dead, and then there's also Dawn of the Dead in the 70s, and he starts talking about slashers like Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th. You know, he's just running the gamut of all the ones everybody knows, which, hey, that's fine. I mean, if it's the first one you're doing, that's a good way to start out. And I think the year after that, it was completely dedicated to nothing but Godzilla movies, which I completely ate that shit up for obvious reasons.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Third. I forget. I forget what he did the third year, but there was one year where he did like Monster Madness Camp something. I forget what it was called, but he was doing like horror movies that were a lot more campy. But like. Not necessarily ones that would end up on Mystery Science Theater, but, ones that weren't as, good as the ones everybody knows. Kind of low budget, a little bit cheesy, but, there was something charming about them. But, yeah, that was definitely kind of what it sort of got my interest in it. I definitely kind of developed an interest in Japanese horror movies just because they had a different approach to American horror. Like, I always kind of appreciated that there was a more quiet, subdued, and more subtle approach that was...
Missing from American horror?
I mean, yeah. I mean, like, if you ever see Japanese horror movies like the Ring or Ju-on, like, they're more about these really slow burns that create this atmosphere of unease. Which
yeah,
that's you can no. There's a couple Western horror movies that definitely fall in there, but we have our own tradition. Off the top of my head, I mean, like if I can name the ones I have seen, like I remember like one year, like when we were just watching horror movies for October in the server, or I think it was like we just went through we went through the Bela Lugosi Dracula, then we watched Dawn of the Dead, we watched Nightmare on Elm Street. We watched Alien, and we watched Ghostbusters. It was another year, I think we watched The Thing. Yeah, and now actually we've got another lineup, which is going to be The Exorcist, Halloween, and a couple really campy ones that got recommended. One came from Duskwell. It was called Shark Side of the Moon, which the name alone tells you everything.
Yeah, although I just realized something. I don't think my first horror movie was Alien.
Yeah.
Can we consider Army of Darkness a horror movie?
I don't know. I think by the time it gets, I think by the time they get past Evil Dead 2, it kind of has stopped being a horror franchise, and it's really more of a fantasy comedy.
Yeah. Even though Sam Raimi does do, I think he just does them as horror movies, with Army of Darkness being more of a mainstream Evil Dead movie.
I mean, it's not like horror movies haven't been mainstream before, but it's just like by the time you get to Army of Darkness, it's a completely different genre. Like, there's nothing really scary about it. Which is not me dissing it. It's a good movie. I just don't consider it a horror movie.
Yeah. There wasn't really any of that kind of tension that the original Evil Dead had, or any of the two Evil Dead after Army of Darkness.
Yeah, I mean, dude, even Evil Dead 2 is more of a horror movie, and it's got like 1 foot in horror and 1 foot in comedy,
And another foot in fantasy.
I mean, how about this? This was the TV show Ash vs. Evil Dead kind of more in touch with its horror roots, or was it still kind of somewhere in the middle?
It was a mixture of both, though. I have to say that horror for me is probably defined more of having the supernatural elements, but the main characters can't really do anything to fight against it.
Yeah, I think like Salem sort of had a good take on it. Like horror is about confronting you with that one thing that scares you, and take away that feeling of safety away from you. Like when you're watching a horror movie, like you should not feel safe. Now, obviously, you're safe because it's just a movie, but you should be feeling just as in peril as the characters are.
I actually want to see what future Evil Dead movies are going to be like, since they've been talking about doing more, and the possibility of Bruce Campbell bringing Ash out of retirement. So how will that work with this new setup?
Yeah, but he said he physically can't play the character anymore.
It's one of those things where it says there is a possibility, though, since it's very possible. Christopher Lee I wasn't the one doing all those lightsaber moves in the Star Wars prequels. So, in a way, never say never.
I suppose. It's gonna...
And it's also just as possible for him to have the character more in a mentor role to the new characters.
Now, this is probably going to sound real basic on my part, but I guess if I had to pick one name associated with horror movies, it would have to be John Carpenter. Because, can you honestly name someone who's been as prolific in a single genre as he is?
Well, there are a couple, but such as I can't believe I'm blanking on his name, but because you got the guy who created Friday the 13th. It was Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, that's Wes Craven.
Yeah. What?
That's Wes Craven you're thinking of.
Yeah, Wes Craven. He's done a lot of horror movies as well.
Okay, yeah. Then we've also got George Romero, though he mainly did zombie movies. He's not alive anymore.
Well, same thing with Wes Craven, unfortunately.
Really? I thought he was still alive.
Nope, he died, I think maybe a decade ago.
Yeah, and then you've got other directors that kind of just dipped their toes in a little bit, like Ridley Scott, because he did other things outside of Alien.
Yeah. It's a genre that needs to have a specific kind of person involved, I think.
It's also a genre that tends to get snubbed a lot. Like, it is very rare to see the Academy give a horror movie any recognition.
Yeah. Although I think it's funny sometimes when I hear someone talk about how, in defense of their favorite movie, saying that it made a lot of money, and that makes it good. But then when you look at the career of John Carpenter, his movies did not make a whole lot of money. The only one that I think really turned a profit was Halloween. The Thing was a
Yeah,
box office bomb.
yeah, yeah. It was. Yeah, I'm just trying to think because I'm almost certain he's had more than one hit besides Halloween. But yeah, I know the thing bombed to the box office, but that was because somebody thought it was a good idea to put it in the same weekend as E.T.
Yeah, and when I say Halloween was the most profitable, I'm talking more along the lines of his horror movies.
Yeah.
Because we know how well Escape from L.A. and Escape from New York did.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, he also did Assault on Precinct 13.
Yeah. So, even though he's referred to as a master of horror, if you look at his box office in that regard, he did not do well.
Yeah, but his films tend to be pretty well regarded. Because, like, yeah, the thing bombed at the box office when it first came out, but it did end up becoming successful once it got on video, and people really started to see, holy crap, this is a great movie.
Yep, and I have to say that to be declared a master at something is not about how much money you make, but rather how much you influence.
Oh, yeah, definitely, because, like, I do think it's a little bit erroneous to say that he invented the slasher genre, but he definitely perfected it.
Yep.
Yeah, because I think Black Christmas came out before Halloween, and and depending on who's talking, that could be considered the first slasher movie.
I think there might have been one before that, but
Yeah, you can't think of it.
yeah.
Yeah, if there probably is. If anyone knows what Matt's talking about, put that in the comments. Yeah, actually, the thing about here's a funny thing about the thing. It's actually part of a trilogy.
Yeah, the Apocalypse trilogy.
Yeah, yeah. Except they're not linked by narrative; they're linked by theme. They're all about different end of the world scenarios. Because after that, he follows it up with Prince of Darkness and In the Mouth of Madness.
The funniest thing about the Thing movie is that it's the most faithful adaptation of the short story.
Who goes there?
Yep.
Up until the ending, because the ending's a little bit more optimistic.
And the Thing in Who Goes There was more intelligent.
Yeah, like it actually talked with them, and
it was very close to building an interstellar spaceship.
I mean that's what it's what it's doing in the remake too. Well, it's not really a remake. I forgot there was for the 5 people who don't know this one, there was a movie in the 50s that was also an adaptation of Who Goes There called Thing from Another World, but it's very different. I've heard it's a good movie in its own right, but it's very different.
I saw it in the same films classes as Alien, so it's a pretty good movie on its own. It's just that it was also a product of its time.
Yeah.
Such as it was an extremely optimistic ending.
And there's also like a lot of Cold War paranoia.
There wasn't so much paranoia, and there wasn't anyone killed in it either. It felt like a very lighthearted film, which sounds very weird when you talk about The Thing.
Yeah. But after The Thing, he does Prince of Darkness, which that's a movie about this priest who's put in charge of guarding this canister, which is supposedly filled with pure evil, or maybe the devil. It's not really clear. But whatever this is, it exists in like subatomic. It exists on the subatomic level, so we're getting into quantum physics and shit, and he brings in like a team of scientists to study it. as the movie goes on, it gets a lot more. It kind of gets trippier and trippier because people start acting weird. They start seeing things, and then there's this whole message that's supposedly coming from the future, trying to warn them about what's going to happen. I really don't want to give it away, but like the final scene is like one of the most creepy and haunting things you'll see in any horror movie.
Oh, yeah. It definitely ends open-ended, too.
Yep. Cannot say the same for In the Mouth of Madness, which is... that is basically as good of a Lovecraft movie as anyone could ever make.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that I watched it just last night, and the movie moved very quickly.
Really?
Yeah, it does. It doesn't drag on.
Yeah.
It's an hour and a half, but it doesn't feel that way. I guess that's more about how Carpenter films things.
Oh yeah, like even when he's doing something a little more slow paced, it doesn't feel slow.
Yeah.
Because I can remember like the thing was that actually had a very tight pace, even though it was a very slow and quiet movie. I think that's just because Carpenter understands editing very well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think he edits his own movies too.
He's one of those directors that you will. I don't think we can. It's even allowed anymore for directors to be able to do our things because of all the unions that are out there these days.
Well, that's kind of that's why he's always kind of preferred to work independently. He doesn't. He wants to make movies on his terms.
Yeah. He wants to write. He wants to direct. He wants to edit. He wants to do a score.
Oh yeah. I think like there's like only been a few instances where someone else had to do the score for his movie.
He does things very, very well, though.
Oh yeah. Definitely he does. Now, kind of looking at some of those classic horror movies. I mean, like we saw Dracula, and it's like even though that movie is looks kind of primitive by today's standards, like there's still parts of it that's still like the bats are clearly held up on strings for one, and there's some very I don't want to say cheap looking sets, but I guess more stage like sets.
They did well with what they had to work with.
Yeah, I mean it's still. Well, I mean for one, like obviously Bela Lugosi is the one who really carries that movie because. I mean, his portrayal of Dracula is so iconic, people keep copying it.
Yep.
And I think that's definitely a good way to put all those Universal movies in. It's like they're iconic, even though you get like some really primitive transformation effects in the Wolfman. That's like still a classic movie. Although I will say we have come a long way since then. I mean, like I still have yet to see a werewolf movie that can top American Werewolf in London just for those effects alone.
It's not likely, but eventually, I think, because with this whole Writers Guild, this new contract with the Writers Guild, people are now. I think writers are going to be more competitive than ever, based on the way they do raises.
Yeah, but I think that's a whole other topic. I'm just talking about like in terms of werewolf effects. Like, although Howling was pretty good, was a little more grotesque, which I think fit the tone it was going for.
Yeah, I think when it comes to transformations, it has to fit the tone of the story. A transformation in a very dark story cannot be painless. If it's any of that, it loses the effect it's going for.
Yeah, and I think like this was kind of an area where that one Wolfman remake with Benicio del Toro sort of fell flat on, just because, like, you could tell that was all done in CG, that was all done in post.
Yeah.
Like it didn't feel real.
Think about it right now. I'd like to see Sam Raimi do a Wolfman movie because he has a preference for practical effects.
Now, if you want to talk about practical effects, they're really gonna make you squirm. I mean, I don't think anyone's done that better than David Cronenberg. I mean, like you've seen The Fly, right?
Yeah.
Like that was just, dude. That is anyone who's not seen The Fly. That is like one of the most grotesque things you'll ever see.
Which might be the least grotesque thing David Cronenberg's ever done.
Okay, what else have you seen?
I'd have to say, I definitely have to say any other Cronenberg movie that takes that and takes it to another level.
I mean, you got Scanners, which has that iconic scene of a guy's head exploding.
Yep. And then they tried to do a sequel to The Fly without him, which
Oh yeah, that
I don't know.
That thing sucks.
I don't know who thought it was a good idea.
The fun fact is that I don't know if this was intentional or not, but the sequel has Eric Stoltz in it, and he was originally cast to play Marty in Back to the Future before they settled on Michael J. Fox, so I just think that's a little funny. Because now you got him playing a fly.
Yeah. Going from McFly to a fly.
Oh, now if you actually want some a truly laughable werewolf movie, I don't think you can top that up werewolf from the Mystery Science Theater episode.
Oh god, yeah. Which I'm pretty sure you can watch for free on the MST3K app.
Oh, I have to see that, but it's like I think I looked up its Wikipedia page, and it even had a quote from Mike Nelson on it where he called it a gift from God just because of how bad it was.
He also said that about Space Mutiny as well.
Like the point is, Mike can appreciate these movies even though they're awful. They covered a lot of bad horror movies on Mystery Science Theater, didn't they?
Yep, and they were all done. They were all sourced out by. Oh, most of them were sourced out by Frank Conniff, who played Davey's Frank.
Yeah.
And he has since apologized to the world for reintroducing Malice the Hands of Fate.
Oh, that actually might rank in one of my top 10 favorite MST3K episodes.
Oh, he wasn't apologizing for the episode. He was apologizing for causing everything that happened afterwards, such as the 4K remaster, the sequels, the game.
I don't know. I mean, like, do you? Okay, I have to wonder. Do you get the best experience watching the Mystery Science Theater episode, or are you missing out on something by not watching the full movie?
That depends, because they also had the... It depends, because the movie Mitchell had John Jackson playing a villain, and at one of the points where they usually have their host segments, they cut out him getting killed off. So the entire time you think John Jackson's going to show up again, but no, he doesn't. He died during a host segment. So I think in some cases you'll be missing out on important plot points if you're just watching the MST3K episode. So that's when you want to see the full movie, but the question is also, why would you want to see the full movie? Usually they're terrible.
I'm kind of also amazed that they actually managed to budge on doing an Ed Wood movie because they wanted to avoid like the easy targets.
And then Nurtrex did Plan 9 for Outer Space.
You know, I am a little excited for the Halloween marathon that we're going to be doing in the server this year, just because I have actually never sat down and seen The Exorcist. Like, this is going to be the first time I see it, and like,
That'll be great.
I mean, like I'm aware of it by reputation. Just like everyone says, it's the scariest movie that's ever been made, and it just might be.
And then you got The Exorcist Believer.
We really do not need to talk about the sequel. Well, maybe the third
No,
one. Maybe the third one.
No, yeah, but The Exorcist Believer is a new movie coming out,
Really?
and it's a sequel. Yeah, to it.
Did they already do 2 prequels to it?
It's a sequel.
Yeah.
They're bringing back the mother from the first movie because Blumhouse wants to do I guess it's a ending trilogy, just like they did with Halloween.
Blumhouse, of course.
Yep. They like to take a concept and then stretch it out to the point where it snaps.
Like, to them, an IP is like a sponge, and they gotta wring every last bit of money out of it they can until it's dry and ugly, and nobody wants to use it anymore, and so you throw that sponge away.
Yeah, their Halloween trilogy could have easily been just 2 movies, because that second movie was was completely filler. Nothing happens in it at all.
Speaking of Halloween, now A24's picked it up.
Yeah, I don't know how a series is going to work out.
A lot of people did not seem to have a lot of confidence in it. I mean, I'll admit I've never really seen any of A24's movies, but I mean, like, I seem to have a very mixed perception of this, because, like, on the one hand, they make movies that seem to be really big hits with critics, and some people also really like them. But I've also seen a lot of people say their movies are kind of pretentious.
Yeah, I think they're pretentious because they want to be seen as the independent horror movies. But just because they're independent doesn't mean they're always going to be good.
I thought it was pretentious because they want to be seen as like this quote-unquote elevated horror.
Yeah, I'm with John Carpenter where I don't get that. Because of what they call elevated horror is generally just horror.
Well, the impression I've got is that it's horror that thinks it's smarter than it actually is.
What you could call elevated horror would easily be The Exorcist. It could be any kind of movie that has a deeper subplot, like in The Mouth of Madness. I mean, you could probably call any horror movie John Carpenter makes as an elevated horror movie, but
I don't know. I personally see it as a really useless buzzword for marketing.
Pretty much. Have you seen the 2022 Hellraiser movie?
No, I haven't. I saw like the first 2. I think I tried watching the third one, but I sort of gave up somewhere in the middle.
If I were to rank it, I'd have to say it'd be right after the 4th movie in terms of how good it is, because basically a 2022 movie is if you took Hellraiser and have it fully embrace the slasher, and then you swipe things from Evil Dead 2013. I say it's the 5th because even though Hellraiser 3 and 4 weren't considered the greatest of movies, at least they did something original with it. Hellraiser 2022 definitely feels like a movie that was made by committee using a formula that Hollywood sees as working.
And I bet it was.
The only reason why it's better than the ones that after 4 is because those movies were most of those movies were made from scripts that originally weren't Hellraiser scripts, such as Hellworld. And I think the one thing that bothers me about 2022 movie is that for the most part, it looked like it was trying to go for a PG-13 rating.
Okay, now that's the kiss of death on a horror movie.
Yeah, the first death was. It sounded pretty gruesome, but you didn't see it.
Okay, I'm not gonna say it's impossible to do a good horror movie with a PG-13 rating, but I also have not seen one.
Yeah, the only slasher movie I can think of that's PG-13 was that 2019 Black Christmas movie.
I think I remember when that thing came out. I did not.
Yeah.
I didn't see it, obviously, because I thought it was going to be really bad.
Oh, I have not seen it. Well, I have heard that basically what it is a Twitter thread from someone who is screaming at the top of their lungs for everyone to do better.
That would not surprise me.
And that it has the most unlikable characters ever conceived.
Yeah. Okay. Spoony had a really good take on how to tell a good slasher apart from a bad one. If I want the main characters to live, it's a horror movie. If I want them to die, it's a comedy.
I have to say one of the worst slasher movies are the ones where you can't wait for them all to die.
Even if at that point they're kind of giving up the ghost and saying, "Look, we know you're here just to see these people die gruesomely."
Yeah,
I mean, like that was kind of what happened to Friday the 13th as it went on. I mean, like I know a guy who actually liked that they got stupider as they went on. I mean, and there are people who liked that, but I mean, let's be real. I mean, like at that point, it stopped being scary.
yeah, and I just thought of a movie that actually count as one of those so-called elevated horrors, the Rob Zombie Halloween movies, because they tried to do something more with the Michael Myers character.
But the thing is like the fact we know so little about him was what made him so effective as a villain in the original, because he just seemed so inhuman.
And then we have Rob Zombie trying to make him human.
Yeah. Now, like on the one hand, that can be scary in its own right, but that doesn't work for a character like Michael. Sort of
No.
Like making it like Michael is not a victim, he is a victimizer. And like I said, that's now victim turned victimizer, that can be a compelling in its own right, but yeah, as I said, that doesn't work for Michael Myers. Ironically, I think it worked more for Jason.
Yeah, simply because his backstory was that he was being bullied and died. Once he drowned in the lake, so that's the reason why he...
Yep.
Okay.
He drowns in the lake while the counselors are off having sex.
And it's the reason why he does not like anyone having sex.
You hear this, incels? You've got the advantage in a Friday the 13th movie.
Their training is now complete. Have you seen any of the recent Evil Dead movies?
No, I didn't. I only saw the original 3, and like I heard the remake wasn't really good. And I didn't know they made any more after that.
The 2013 movie I thought was pretty good. It went back to its horror movie roots, and that's why I think people didn't really like it.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like people were really confused on if it was supposed to be a remake or a reboot.
It's a sequel. The main character, Mia, it was allegedly written to be Ash's daughter.
You know, so I get the feeling this was a movie where the marketing kind of let it down.
Yeah, pretty much. And the characters were likable. They weren't characters that you wanted to see die in horrific ways. I guess the biggest comparison between the two is with Evil Dead 2 and, well, the original Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2013 was that it takes place in the same cabin as his car is there as a wreck. And then there's also the characters who are killed off one by one, with a final survivor walking away. According to what they want, the original plans was they do another Army of Darkness of S, a sequel to the 2013 movie, and then have them tie the franchise up with a crossover movie between the two.
And I'm guessing, seeing as how plans did not turn out that way, that's kind of where Ash vs. Evil Dead spun out of.
Yeah. The actress who played Mia, she pretty much explained why she stopped doing horror movies for a while. Why she took a break from them was because of how much it took on her physically and mentally. Because she had to go from one personality where she's normal to another where she's a deadite. Back and forth. And then she was buried alive for one scene. Which shows you how they were really going for a more realistic experience.
Yeah, if you want to talk about realistic experience, okay. Have you seen Nosferatu?
Yes.
Have you seen the remake done by Werner Herzog?
No.
Now, Werner Herzog, for those of you who don't know, this guy is a director who is not really all that concerned with things like doing things the conventional way. He often likes to put his actors in the exact same scenarios the characters are in. So, for just as an example, in Fitzcarraldo, the characters are going down on the Amazon in a 300-ton steamboat, and the actors are actually going down a river in an actual 300-ton steamboat. It's all completely real. There's no there's no models or effects, anything. So for his Nosferatu remake, there's a scene that involves the use of 10,000 rats, and Herzog, because he's such a mad lad, decided that these rats needed to be dyed gray.
Oh, jeez.
And these rats, and they were dyed by soaking them in some boiling water for a few seconds, and this ended up killing a huge chunk of the rats, and actually by the time the rats even arrived on set, some of them had already started eating each other. And like I said, and he lets loose all these rats onto the final scene in his Nosferatu remake. I would actually say it's really worth checking out, just because nobody makes movies like Werner Herzog, for one, and also Klaus Kinski is such an amazing presence as Dracula. Yeah, they don't call him Orlok in this one. He just comes off as he comes off as very creepy, very, very inhuman, and yet at the same time, there's also this. You can see he's a very lonely soul, and he longs for human companionship again, and he can't feel it, and it elicits this odd feeling of sympathy. And sympathy and Klaus Kinski are not two things that usually go in the same sentence.
No, I can't see that.
Matt knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, since you don't know about Evil Dead Rise,
What is
this one take...
Is this another movie?
Yeah, just came out this past year.
Oh, is it good?
And it actually is. Because Sam Raimi actually is involved in the franchise, so when he gets the directors, he makes certain they know what they're doing.
Yeah, so he's kind of in a producer role at this point.
Yeah. Basically, It's another Book of the Dead.
Yeah, that
You
was
know,
always something that I couldn't wrap my head around. Didn't he? Doesn't Ash destroy the Necronomicon in the first movie?
well, but he did, but the idea now is that, you know how there are 3 books in Army of Darkness?
No. Actually, I think I'd have forgotten that.
Okay, well, basically the idea now is that there are 3 books of the dead. Ash has one. The 2013 Evil Dead movie has another,
Mm-hmm.
and Evil Dead Rise has the third one. The third one being locked in a bank vault for a century, because a teenager decides to take the book and the records about it and play the records while, after opening a book, unleashes evil upon an LA apartment building. You can only imagine what ended up happening. All hell breaking loose. And the lead actress in this movie looks more like Jill Valentine than Jill Valentine in the new Resident Evil movie.
I keep forgetting that was a thing that happened.
That was also a decent movie, but moving back to Evil Dead, it's just they have the chainsaw and boomstick again.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the boomstick being illegal in California. What makes the Deadites in this movie is that they're more serious than previous iterations of them. So they're pretty much giant assholes. Again. My overall opinion is that it's a good movie. Unlike, I guess in a way, that MST3K puts it when they're selecting a movie, is that they look at a movie and see whether or not the main protagonist is moving a story along rather than just wandering back and forth in it. The main reason why they picked this Island Earth, despite the fact that it's considered a good movie, the main character of that movie does not move the story along. Evil Dead Rise is about a young woman who finds out she's pregnant, goes to see her sister in LA for advice, gets caught up in a Deadite invasion. Probably the most interesting thing about it is that the fact that it never comes to her mind to abort the baby, it unwittingly is a pro-life movie.
And then there's like Rosemary's Baby, which really kind of makes you ask a question. Like I actually remember I was in on a Google Hangouts with Weaponized Nerd Rage and a bunch of other people. This was years ago. It's I don't know. It's probably still up, but good luck finding it. But yeah, Rage knew that I was a Christian, and he asks me like. He asked me, like, Brett, I mean, like, given, like, your religious leanings, like, would you ever consider aborting the devil? And it wasn't, like, a gotcha or anything. I think the context was he was kind of in an argument with a film professor about whether or not Rosemary's Baby was a pro-abortion movie. And, like, his argument about it not being was that nobody would ever think aborting the devil was a bad thing. Which, you know, I can see that argument. Yeah, I mean, like, you'd be hard-pressed to find someone who wouldn't think that. My take on it was that it's such an extreme scenario that borders on impossibility that I can't really answer that just because of how out there the scenario is. I mean, like, I haven't even seen Rosemary's Baby. I mean, like, I know its reputation and I've heard it's a great movie. Even if Roman Polanski is a fucking monster, but that's a different matter. But I would really have to say, if you're kind of looking at it, Rosemary's Baby, and saying and saying like it's got a pro-abortion message behind it, I'm thinking to myself, I think that may say a little bit more about you than the movie.
Yeah, it definitely does, because does it ever bring up the idea of abortion?
Like I said,
Or
like I said, I've never seen it, and I just know its premise and its reputation, and let me put it this way: if you're looking at a movie where a woman is about to give literal birth to the devil, as somehow being pro-choice, like I said, I think that says more about you.
Yeah.
Because I think
there's a lot of context that should be placed in there as well too. Yeah. Because if abortion isn't brought up at all in the movie, it might be something more about. It definitely is about the audience.
Yeah. I mean, I would think that the horror of knowing that this woman is carrying literal evil inside her womb he pretty much says everything. Like, yeah. That's what the horror is about.
Yeah,
that she's been made an unwitting pawn in she's been made an unwilling vessel. In fact, oh my god, I think I actually might know what I think I might actually know what the subtext is now that
Well,
I'm not gonna say because I don't want to risk demonetization. Not that we're big enough for it anyway. But I think I figured it out once I said the word unwilling. Yeah, I think it's that kind of subtext.
I think the biggest question I've got is how would you know that your child is going to be the devil?
Like I said, I'm pretty sure it's explained somewhere in the movie.
Yeah, I've never seen it either, so I, for the most part, asked you about it since I was hoping that they gave some kind of clarity to it.
Yeah. Okay, but so we don't end on a more awkward note.
It could be worse. We could be talking about Stephen King and some of his controversial choices.
Yeah. Although I will have to, like that one scene in It, the novel, not the movie or the miniseries, which thank God cut that out because that did not need to be there. I understand wanting to maintain the integrity of his work, but I feel like he was unreasonably salty towards Kubrick's version of The Shining.
Yeah, I think it's because this is probably going to sound like a lot of people who analyzed The Shining, but could be that Jack Torrance is an avatar of King himself.
Well, I think, hasn't he admitted that? Like, it was kind of inspired by what he was sort of going through when he was writing it.
Probably. Although Jack Nicholson is a good choice to play a crazy person.
Well, he's retired now.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Although he was also offered a role for The Exorcist.
Huh. I wonder why he turned that down.
I think it's because it was influenced away from him because do you think he looks like a priestly person?
He looks like a specific kind of priest. I won't say anything beyond that.
Yeah. I think that's the reason why they decided to go in a different direction.
Yeah, but even then, like that's still such a great movie. I mean, great movie, The Shining. because Kubrick managed to take the text and sort of find something new in it and put his own spin on it.
Yeah. Which I think that really made take more steps, really, to have his work be given a new light to it. You know, another kind of interpretation of his work.
Yeah. The original has its own virtues, for one. I mean, Jack Torrance in the novel is a much more sympathetic character, but the movie really makes you feel, really captures that feeling of isolation, and really, and it creates this atmosphere where everything feels uneasy, and like once Jack really starts to slip into insanity, it kind of goes back, like you just don't feel safe anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, another thing, that whole story about Kubrick deliberately antagonizing Shelley Duvall, also that her performance would be more authentic, that's complete bullshit.
Yeah, I don't understand why people would do that. Make up a lie about Kubrick.
He was one of those perfectionist directors.
Yeah.
And back then it probably wasn't back then. And Shelley Duvall sort of also kept a low profile, so it wasn't exactly easy to debunk.
No, I can only imagine she got tired of acting after a while.
Yeah, but it's like to say like I know Kubrick wasn't exactly the easiest director to work with, but to say like he was abusing his own actors just to get a better performance, like, yeah, that's.
It also really clashed with the story about how he kept the kid who played Danny from knowing that it was a horror movie.
Yeah.
How they say he abused his actors. You'd think that he wouldn't have any kind of. He would just go after a kid as well, but no.
Okay, Matt and I are starting to come to the end of the show, so we're gonna. So you know what? Let's just invite you guys, the audience. Why don't you kind of post what your thoughts on with horror movies are? Just put them down on the comments. We'll try to respond to them. Onto them. It'll either be me, it'll either be Matt. One of us will try to get back to you. And just give us your thoughts. Like what are your favorite ones? What do you like about it? What do you like about the genre? Do you think elevated horror is a meaningless buzzword made up for marketing? And they can say whatever you want. Other than that, just keep up to date with the Mythoverse on Twitter at the Mythoverse, and follow us on Patreon. All links will be in the description. And we'll see you guys next week. You got anything to leave off on, Matt?
Well, we'll see you next week. And there's no such thing as a wrong answer when it comes to what your opinion is on horror.
Perfect.